Manuel Enrique Pereira, also known as Besouro Manganga. Besouro Manganga. Meu besouro voou, peguei esse besouro. Mataram um besouro e maracangalha, com faca de tocumandinga falha. In capoeira music, there's probably no other person who is sung about as much as Besouro Manganga. Besouro Manganga was from the Reconcavo area of Bahia. In Bahia, you have the area that had a lot of the sugarcane plantations outside of San Salvador, or Salvador da Bahia de Todos os Santos, the name that we call where Pelourinho and where capoeira has become very popular. He learned capoeira from Mestre Alipio from a very young age. So he learned what we would consider pre-contemporary Angola and regional capoeira. So he learned capoeira as it was taught before it was commercialized or before it was put into the academias. Okay? Why is he so important? Well, first, let's look at what type of person he was. Okay? He was the kind of person who would like to be called what we call a disordeiro. Disordeiro is a word for a person who's disorderly, who causes a lot of problems at the market, in bars, anywhere he goes. There's two big ideas of who Besouro Manganga was and what powers he had. Here's where it gets interesting, right? Because Besouro Manganga supposedly had two different kinds of powers, but they're contradictory to each other. He wouldn't need one if he had the other. So this is where the interesting thing about oral tradition and how we talk about Besouro Manganga and other capoeira people and other capoeira mestres and mestras during history. Okay? We always have to take everything with a grain of salt, and we always have to see and put it in context. Do I believe he had magical superpowers? I have no idea. I'd like to believe. Coming from a heavy background since I was young in Afro-Brazilian culture, I love the stories of Besouro Manganga, Besouro do Santo Amaro. Besouro Manganga was said that when he was in trouble and there was too many people attacking him, he could turn into a beetle and fly away. Okay? So he could turn into a beetle and fly away. On the other hand, he was also, Manganga can also be translated as a person like a witch doctor or a shaman, someone adept at manipulating the ashe currents or magic. So, Besouro Manganga would sometimes fight with police. There was stories, Mestre Acordion's book says, where he would take their batons, steal them from the police, and take them in the morning and throw them back at the door of the police station and say, "Here you go, you bats." Morcegos, right? Bats. And it was also said because of his magical power and prowess, he had a corpo fechado. Corpo fechado. Corpo means body, fechado means close. Some of you practice bananeira fechada, au fechado, different kinds of movements with the word fechado. Fechado or fechar in the verb is to close. Okay? Corpo is body. So knives, bullets, poison, all these things could not hurt Besouro Manganga because he had a corpo fechado. Okay? So, one day, because he was such a troublemaker, even his own bosses, so let's go back in time to the 1920s, 1900s, late 1800s in Bahia. Black people or Afro-Brazilians tended not to have education. They were illiterate. They didn't know how to read or write. So many times from the traditions way back before even like when slavery was still available or still legal in Brazil, the master or somebody who was in charge would give a piece of paper and say, go to so-and-so place or so-and-so market, find so-and-so, give him the paper. The paper would read, "This is Besouro Manganga. He's here to work on your roof for so and so money. Please give him this, blah 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 blah." So it was like a referral notice. Okay, But because he couldn't read, he didn't know. So the people who wanted him dead decided to hire a shaman, Manganga, and create a knife made out of a very dense wood that the Amerindians or native Brazilians used. It's a very hard, dense wood, very hard, and you could shape it and make a knife. So they made a knife out of this wood called tocum. Madeira means wood, madeira de tocum. And they had the shaman bless it to be able to penetrate Besouro Maganga's corpo fechado. Okay? So, when Besouro Manganga got to the place was called Maracangalha. Maracangalha, and that also comes out in many songs. It's a place in Bahia. He knocked on the door. The assassin was waiting inside, but didn't know who Besouro was or what he looked like. So, Besouro hands the people inside the note, and it says, "This is Besouro, kill him." And at that moment, they stabbed Besouro with a knife made of tocum, of a special wood. Okay? Now, why is Besouro Maganga's story so important? Over the last 30 years, as I've been studying capoeira culture and philosophy, we have to remember that it's not based on Asian, like samurai or Buddhist temple. It's based on slave society. It's based on really rough and tumble, hardcore culture where people are betrayal, right? The basis of slave society for the slave is the concept of betrayal. Betrayal, okay? For a slave, they would, it's common to be, the word betrayal is so important. For example, a slave child is born alongside with a white child or the master's child. They both might share the same breast milk from the slave mother. This is called suckling, or a lot of times this is part of slave culture. A lot of the slave owners' babies would also breastfeed from the slave mothers. Okay? Then the kids would grow up playing together, best friends. But eventually, the betrayal and understanding of where you are as a slave and where the master is, or the person in power, would come to full fruition, right? So this betrayal by who used to be your best friend now owns you and your family and can do whatever they want to your family, to your sisters, to your mother, to your father, anything to you. They own you. So one of the biggest concepts, and I'll be referring to this later in different topics, is the concept of betrayal. This is something that a lot of times people have a hard time dealing with, a lot of misunderstanding with older masters, because they have this concept ingrained, and sometimes they don't know how to deal with it or live past it. Not everybody. So, Besouro Manganga represents this concept of two things. One, how the Afro-Brazilian experience also has illiteracy, which means can't read or write, no education, and they're under the power of society. Number two, this concept of betrayal. Besouro trusted the person who gave him the letter to take to get work. And what it cost him? His own death. Mataram Besouro em Maracangalha, em Maracangalha, em Maracangalha. They killed Besouro em Maracangalha. Com faca de tocum, mandinga falha. The magic is at flow with the knife of tocum. Besouro Manganga is such an important character. Each capoeirista should be able to sing at least one song and know the meaning. In 2009, they did a remake. I love the movie in Brazil. It's on YouTube. I've seen it. Search Besouro film. I've seen it with English subtitles. I'm sure there's other ones on there. Thank you for joining me for my first Patreon video. Philosophy, culture. We're going to do it, everything, music, everything here. Welcome to Mestre Vibes on Patreon. Axé. Certo dia numa festa, um moleque me chamou pra jogar. Eu que sou desconfiado, fiquei longe só pra arrepiar. O que tava escrito na camisa é um tal de Besouro, Manganga. Axé, lots of love, peace and capoeira.